Hello, everybody. I just woke up a little while ago. I'm so tired. All right, next on the list here. Why are FLRs, Femdom content, and Gynarchy becoming more mainstream? So what's up with this? I was shared some information once by an individual on X who the chart showed clearly that there was a greater level of interest in FLRs. There's also obviously femdom content has just gone through the roof compared to when I was a child. This stuff is everywhere, and it's no longer in the closet anymore. And Gynarchy, obviously, I could have never imagined going on X and seeing some of these Gynarchy accounts having 3 or even 4,000 followers and growing. So what's been going on here? I think there's a lot of factors. The first is that I think that all of these things have been actually very successfully marketed to people in ways that others have dismissed or ignored. So, for instance, when we're talking about femdom content, I believe I've touched on this subject before, but Japan in particular, I do bring them up a lot, but it's because they are extremely important to any Gynarchy movement, to anything related to femdom, especially. They used to be matrifocal a long time ago, so their culture does have a history of they have a not a history, shouldn't say that. They have a past of matriarchal elements. And so it should come as no surprise that after the success of animated television shows like Dragon Ball Z, they were able to release other content. They're giving people little bits, little tastes of what femdom is, of a woman dominating a guy or having control over a guy. And they continued after the creation of DBZ to include more and more of that content. Uh, Now, when I say they did it, I'm talking about the Japanese artists, the mangaka, the animators. They're the ones that threw their weight and support behind these projects, and they were very successful. I don't think anybody can really doubt that. And depending on how broad your definition of femdom is, you could even see Sailor Moon as a form of femdom, at least in the sense of her having the most power, being more powerful than the male who protects her constantly. In other words, when it came right down to it, it wasn't Endymion who defeated Queen Beryl; it was Usagi Tsukino, Sailor Moon. She was the one who, along with her friends, uh, beat the bad guy. Now, that kind of explains it well enough. You know, there's different countries promoting the content. It starts in the artwork, then it makes its way into all your television shows, your cartoons, whatever. But I think that this is only part of the story. Now, why is Gynarchy becoming more mainstream? I believe that the primary reason why this is happening is because of the failure of male leadership throughout the world. And when I mean failure of male leadership, I don't mean just in countries that are male led, like in the Middle East. I'm talking about the general collective failure of male leadership worldwide. What have men done to fuck things up? I mean, again, just off the top of my head, uh, the male politicians following money instead of their own principles. In other words, compromising their principles for money. This has been especially dangerous when it came to global warming. Instead of adopting policies like the Green New Deal because they're too expensive, they have decided in their infinite wisdom, or rather lack thereof, to kick that can down the road for another generation to deal with because they don't want to take responsibility for the balance that human beings must maintain with nature in order to survive. That right there, the collective leadership of men leading to collective suicide, will cost the death of billions of people. That alone should be enough for anybody to go, okay, you're obviously not listening. At least not all of you. A good chunk of you are not listening. And see, this would be all well and good if they weren't extremely dangerous, but a lot of the individuals who are pushing for deregulation of the oil companies, who want them to just do whatever they want so that they can be successful. These are the same individuals who occupy spaces in the military, who are overrepresented in police institutions, and so on. So they have disproportionate military power, and that gives them a great degree of control over society. So when you see this kind of not only leadership, but you see the kind of leadership that can be backed up by violence, you wonder, is there something else? Is there an alternative to this horror? Because it's not just the fact that the male leadership is failing to do anything about the planet becoming uninhabitable. It's entirely because of male leadership that we had the proliferation of nuclear weapons. No one can deny that shit. That wasn't women collectively doing that. That was the men in the military and all the other men connected to them enabling that possibility, where just one nuclear mistake could kill billions of human beings. And if you ever wonder why this is so fucking dangerous, think about it this way. If what is up with that noise? If one person messes up, let's say you don't even just have nukes. Let's say someday somebody comes up with like a bioweapon to make it even worse. And unlike a nuclear bomb, a bioweapon, you can just put it in a person, have them infiltrate a population. It could just stay dormant for a couple of months, whatever. And then all of a sudden, boom, millions of people are dead and infected, and they're infecting millions of other people. You know what the logic of male leaders is going to be? Well, if they have the technology, then we should have the technology too. Because they have it, right? Right? Yeah, I guess if they're walking off the cliff, that means we also have to walk off the cliff. This is exactly the problem with developing weapons of mass murder, is that it never just stops with one weapon. It's eventually going to enter into other areas of science. You're not just going to have people using chemistry and physics to build hydrogen bombs. You're going to have people trying to figure out ways to collapse another nation's economy or country out of revenge or for economic gain or political gain. And this is all enabled by male leadership. All these horrors that I'm talking about, all of it is enabled by the leadership. They rationalize the continued existence of these weapons and stuff. And they're even willing to rationalize the continued existence of the oil companies, of producing things with oil, because they can't imagine a world where we have to take steps back in order to move forward again. They just will not compromise on that whatsoever. I'm talking about the hardliners, not the people who are in the more reasonable camp, like the ones in the middle or the ones who have reservations, but like the very, very extremely pro-oil groups are just not going to move from this position. And so when you see all this epic failure, and not just that, you're seeing, when you see all this violence and destruction and abuse that men have been doing for thousands of years, and not only are you not seeing you're not seeing a reverse. What you're seeing a peace that is barely being maintained. Some people will try to say, well, hey, the world is mostly peaceful now. Yeah, it's the illusion of peace. They don't want to be at peace with each other. They're forced to be at peace. But how long can you force the peace? And that right there is like the inherent flaw of the existing system. People just care about the results now, I've come to find. They don't care about how those results came into being. And if they're even going to stay, because I've heard this time and time again. In fact, I might even make a video investigating it more deeply or talking about it more deeply. But there's the whole, Like whenever you criticize males or male leadership, well, they said, well, hey, we built everything, which is a lie. You did not build everything. Stop making shit up. You did not invent everything. You also need to stop making shit up there too. But even if that were true, what does the maintenance argument have to do with leadership directly? Just because you create things and maintain systems, it doesn't mean that that system is good for the continued prosperity of the human race. If you're maintaining the system, puts more of that shit up into the air that continues to heat up the system and cause all these weird disasters, and then it leads to the food chain being broken, along with a lot of other crazy shit, and then billions of us die, well, your maintenance argument goes right out the window, doesn't it? See, that's the thing about these people. It's almost like they feel like whenever they're talking with somebody like me, that I don't know everything that's going on, or they have the contempt. They think they can somehow treat me contemptuously and condescendingly as if I don't know what's happening. What you are basically doing is the equivalent of of somebody applying for a job and then leaving out the worst aspects that are connected to that. Right? You talk about maintenance. Yeah, we maintain your society. We build your shit. Yeah, you're also the ones that rape a lot of our girls and molest them and destroy their lives. Somebody said if you want to take the credit for all the good stuff, you better take the blame for all the bad. You're also the ones who seem to be the greatest impediment to progress when it comes to dealing with living in balance with nature. Again, if it wasn't for all these men supporting these oil companies, these corporations who allowed money to get into politics in the first place, if it wasn't for their failures on these issues, we wouldn't have this problem because we would have solved it a long time ago. The sad thing is, of course, is that there are some women who enable them out of either fear because they don't want the men to hurt them. They want to personally benefit. So you do have personality disordered individuals who are obviously into this mix. You also have women who are afraid and don't want to go against their men. So this is the consequence of violent leadership, of a leadership that is maintained, that propagates itself through these means and through fear. And the end result is a horrible, horrible thing. And what is that? The death of the species. And they obviously have an ideology that demands absolute freedom. You hear that this with libertarianism, they want freedom or absolute freedom, and yet they don't want to take responsibility for this freedom that they continue to protect. Like, what are they doing with their freedom? And this is where Gynarchists and other people are like, well, hey, dude, you can maintain all the machines that you want. You can create as many inventions as you want. The only problem is what happens when your inventions are mass murder weapons? What happens when they get into the wrong hands? What happens when somebody decides, oh, I'm going to make a bioweapon, right? Is it still good then? They obviously, I don't know, in their twisted brains, they think somehow that this equals out the bad. No, it doesn't. It doesn't equal out the bad. They're not even on the same plane. There is no good thing a man has done that will ever counteract the existence of hydrogen bombs. Never, because the existence of them guaranteed our destruction sooner or later. Nothing will ever equal that out. Because in order to balance something out, forces have to cancel. There is nothing canceling that shit out. It's still an ongoing problem. It's just that people have decided to talk about other things. So, when you are dealing with individuals who want to continue to push for freedom, but who also demonstrate a complete lack of responsibility for protecting the environment, for not just deregulating, but for stopping individuals from doing research into these things or trying to disarm. When they continue to push for these things, to push for these weapons of mass murder because of this fake temporary peace they've brought, they have endangered us all. And they continue to endanger us all. Why? Because they think that this fake peace that's not going to last is a good thing somehow. I'm going to see you in part 2.